Coach, good to see you, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Good
I
to
am
be
well.
here.
Yeah, it's a great crowd as per usual. And, of course, the lovely and talented Jenny Dell joining us here.
Love to have Miss Jenny with us. Appreciate
Thank
what
you.
she does.
Appreciate you.
CBS does a great job for the SEC, and she's part of that.
I'll tell you, I don't know what they're feeling, but I'm going to hate to see that last game come when CBS moves on to the Big Ten. It's for me, it's going to be a sad time.
Well, you know, they've been great partners for such a long time. I mean, I've been in this league for, over 20 years, and, you know, it seems like CBS has been our partner for, you know, the greatest, you know, part of that, and been great partners, very professional people.
Yeah.
You know, Craig has done a great job, and, you know, Gary's done a great job, and we've had several different, you know, sideline folks, but, you know, it's always sad when you have great partners and, you know, for whatever reasons, you know, those things aren't going to be the same in the future.
Yeah, of course, it was a big change when Vern left, but obviously you get, you know, a talented Brad Nessler who stepped right in, but we'll miss them. But nevertheless, they are here this weekend, and I dare say we'll see you guys again before the season's out, Jenny.
I have a feeling.
Yeah, why don't you jump on in and get our conversation with the coach going?
Absolutely. Well, of course, thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to be up here, and the feelings are definitely mutual when it comes to CBS and our love for the SEC. So I was able to speak with a lot of players this week, and they all shared the sentiment that you said this game coming up is personal. So how much of a revenge factor is there with Tennessee coming in?
No, I don't think it's personal just from a revenge standpoint. I think, you know, the players know that what this game means to a lot of people. You know, this is like our big rivalry game. Auburn's a big rivalry game too. I don't mean to disrespect anybody from saying that, but, you know, from way back when, you know, Coach Bryant, their stadium's named after people that made this rivalry what it is, and it's, you know, persevered through the years because of the great quality programs that, you know, both schools have had, and I think that's one of the things that, you know, this means a lot to a lot of people, and I think our players know that. I think that makes it personal. I don't think there's any doubt that, you know, when you lose the game the year before to whoever you play, you know, that's hurtful. You don't have a great feeling at the end of the game. You feel very disappointed, and that disappointment stays with you. And I'm sure that, you know, that's a motivating factor for some folks as well.
Especially when it was 15 years running that you hadn't lost. That kind of makes it feel a little worse, I'm sure.
Well, and I'm really, really proud of all the players that we had, all the coaches that we had, all the people who did a great job for so many years who made that happen, because, you know, we realize how difficult it is to, you know, win this game under any circumstances. So to do it successfully over time was, you know, a real accomplishment for all the people who were here.
Exactly. Tonight's first phone call on the show is brought to you by Alabama 811. To help prevent injuries, outages, and loss of life, call 811 or visit al811.com before you dig. It's free, it's simple, and it's the law. And as per usual, Pee Wee is joining us from Grand Bay, Alabama, as our first caller of the night. Hello, Pee Wee. Good evening.
Good evening, Eli. Coach, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Pee Wee. How are you?
I'm doing well. Coach, you know, over the last few weeks, you know, our offensive line has made some improvement, but there still seems to be, you know, some problems with pre-snap errors, and we're getting pressure in off of the left-hand side of the line a lot of times on the speed rush. I'm just wondering what can be done to kind of slow that down without having to put a back over on that side to help that.
Well, you know, Pee Wee, I was going to ask you the same question. I mean, you're the offensive line coach. You call every week, and we talk about the offensive line. You know more about the offensive line than I do, so why don't you tell me what you think? What do you think we ought to do?
Well, you need to put a back over there at times to help Caden get some protection in, because a lot of time on the speed rush from that side is where the pressure comes from. A lot of it doesn't come from the right on the speed rush, but it does come from the left. So you know, besides putting it back over there, and I don't know what unless you put a tight end, you know, to help that rush. You know, that would be my plan.
Well, I think I'm in total agreement with you that we've been very inconsistent at times in pass protection. Some of it has been created by the left side of the line, which I think there are strategic things that we can do to try to help that side of the line. You mentioned several of them. But I also think that, we've made some mistakes sometimes in pressure and in terms of how we block pressures, and I think that comes from communication, which can come from really good preparation and really good confidence. I think, if you look at the myriad of things that people do on third down now that create problems in pass protection, whether it's, I always talk about simulators, where somebody rushes, it's supposed to be dropping, and somebody drops, it's supposed to be rushing. When you put that in a combination of, okay, we're going to block these four guys on the mic, well, two of those guys drop and two other guys come over here. I think that's probably one of the biggest changes in defensive football in the last 5 or 6 years. I think probably the Baltimore Ravens were the first people to do this, several years ago and created lots of problems. So, and I think that then you have man pressures that create the same kind of problems. You got a freshman playing left tackle who's a very talented guy. He's working, he's getting better, and he's going to continue to get better and be an outstanding player. But he's a freshman. And I know the expectation is that we can replace anybody, anytime, and they're going to step in and play like a first-round draft pick. But that's not necessarily the case. We all have to have time to develop players. And one of the things that, if you take the 10 guys that went in the portal, they were all juniors and seniors. If you take the 10 guys that replaced them, they're all freshmen and sophomores. All right, so you end up having a younger team, and you end up having to develop players from a lower level of experience and knowledge, which helps create confidence and communication, and all these things help guys play with a better consistency of performance. And that consistency of performance is what defines success. Now, our team has made a lot of progress. I'm proud of our team. We got to keep making that progress. Some of it's psychological, some of it's ability to communicate and execute at every position. So just like last week, we lost our collective focus in the game. Halfway through the third quarter, we go through ahead 24-6, and everybody just lost their collective focus. Their mental intensity, their energy level, everybody got relief syndrome because we were ahead in the game. We get a penalty, they get a first down, they go down and score, the momentum of the game changes, and once you lose that, it's hard to get it back. So the lesson to be learned for our team and that young team, we got to play for 60 minutes. You got to have the poise and the confidence to keep playing the next play. You can't get frustrated when something goes bad. All right, so you just got to keep playing for 60 minutes in the game. You can't look at the scoreboard. You can't let all these external factors impact what happens in a game because, basically you control what happens in the game by what you do. So if you're letting all these other things affect what you do, that's not necessarily going to help you be successful. So, and all this is a part of growing up. If any of you all out there have had kids, you've gone through this a little bit with your own kids. And we just got a bunch of them, that's all.
Yeah.
A bunch of kids, and you were just saying there's such high expectations with this program always, and you've had so much success at the quarterback position. You look at some of the names that have come through, whether it be Tua, Jalen, Bryce Young. What is it, maybe a characteristic about Jalen Milroe that you want to make sure this fan base knows about him?
Yeah, well, I think that, everybody needs to know that Jalen is a really hard worker. He's got a lot of pride in performance in terms of how he wants to do things. He's a perfectionist, in terms of the way he approaches playing the game. Mm-hmm. And hard worker, well liked by his teammates. I think his poise and confidence has, sort of increased, with every game that he's played. And I think that comes with experience. Knowledge is something that if you're going to have any kind of wisdom about what you do, you have to develop knowledge. Well, there's a lot of bumps in the road when you're developing knowledge, and you have to learn how to use those bumps in the road, which are kind of setbacks in ways, but they're lessons, and you can't waste failings. You got to learn from those lessons so that that's how you keep developing and keep progressing. So, that's the one thing that when you're a perfectionist, which Jalen is you can't get down on yourself And you have to be able to stay focused on using those experiences to help you play better the next play and not let those things affect your next play. So, and he's learned how to do that a lot better, and I think that's something that's helped his consistency as well. But I don't think anybody can really sort of put the how important it is for players to have confidence,
Yes.
in themselves. Know what to do, how to do it, why it's important to do it that way, and have enough experience to go out there and just be able to execute and see the big picture and make good decisions and do it with confidence and know that, you're not going to bat 100%. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're a baseball player and you make 2 outs every 3 times you bat, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a game of failings. And I know, fans don't want to hear this, but that's really how you develop. That's really how you execute, learn how to execute on a consistent basis, is learn from those experiences. And that's what experience is. It's an accumulation of all the things that have happened to you, a lot of which probably were not good, that got you where you are now.
2 weeks ago, before the Texas A&M game, you said that you spoke with Milroe and you said, you don't need to be James Harden out there. I want you to be more of a point guard. I want you to just do what you're confident in doing, but don't try to do too much. Have you seen improvement in that development over the last few weeks?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a mentality, when you think you have to make a play. Mm-hmm. Or are you just the guy that distributes the ball so everybody else can make a play? And really the quarterback position is really defined by a guy who makes the decision who gets the ball every play. You're either handing it off to this guy, you're faking to this guy and keeping it, you're faking it and throwing a pass, an RPO, you're dropping back, what coverage are they in, which side am I supposed to be on, who am I throwing it to? So you really are a point guard. You're somebody who's distributing the ball to other people so they can make plays. And in doing that, you are creating value for yourself because that's what your position requires. It doesn't require you to make all the plays. It doesn't require you to score 35 points in the game. You need to have 13 assists and no turnovers. That's what we want to have, at that position. So, and I think, Jalen gets that, and I think he's distributed the ball correctly more and more each and every game.
Hey, before we break away, every week we do this show, and there's always former Bama players here in the restaurant. But there's one gentleman I saw walk in a little bit ago who I've not seen in a while. He played here from 1980 through 1982. Peter Kim, our former place kicker, is here. Peter, why don't you stand up over there? And nice
Peter,
to have you.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, great to have you here in
come
Tuscaloosa.
and visit with you. He was at practice today, too.
Was he?
Oh, yeah.
Not much he could. I mean, he was good, but not a whole lot he can teach Will Reichert.
No, I'm not sure. Will would probably welcome any tips that he could give him.
Yeah, but Peter was great when he played here, and one of the very first super kickers that the Crimson Tide has had over the years.
Well, I think the tradition, though, of having a great player like Peter from Hawaii was really, really important to getting a player like Tua to come here. And, Peter was helpful because of relationships and just the whole idea.
Yeah. Well, Peter, it's great to have you with us. Enjoy the weekend here and Roll Tide. We're going to come right back. We'll continue with the coach, with Jenny Dell from CBS, and more of your questions as well.
Now the snap. Here's Milroe. Loads up long. Looks. Has a man. Wide open midfield. Taking it to the house. Kobe. Prentice. Touchdown. Alabama. 80 yards. And that's the way to recover right there.
It sure was for Jalen Milroe. That's going to be on the season, his 11th passing touchdown to go with his 5 rushing touchdowns. And Kobe Prentice on the receiving end of that big touchdown throw as he caught 2 passes for 93 yards a weekend ago. Hey, folks, stop by the Patriot Center T-Mobile store on Highway 69 South That's coming up on Monday, October 23rd, between 5:30 and 7 o'clock. A chance for you to meet current Bama players Kool-Aid McKinstry, Deontay Lawson, Kendrick Blackshear, and Terrion Arnold. You can also win great prizes, including game tickets and branded Yeti coolers, signed merchandise, and a whole lot more. So roll tide. Check it out Monday, October 23rd from 5:30 until 7 o'clock in the afternoon. Jenny, why don't you jump back in with the coach?
Absolutely. This is kind of a broad question, but besides winning all the championships that you have here in Tuscaloosa, what would you say is the greatest reward that you get as a head coach?
Well, I think my greatest reward is the relationships that I have with the players. I think all the players that we've had here and how much you appreciate, all they did to make the program as successful as it's been. And all the relationships that you have with coaches who have contributed to it, whether it's recruiting or how they've developed players. But, my thing that I love most about coaching is, the relationships that you have with the players and helping them be more successful in life. That's whether it's personal development, whether it's academics, the importance of them developing a career off the field. Because, when you go to college, you're really preparing yourself for the day you can't play football. That's what I try to, because I don't want to minimize the fact that they want to play in the NFL someday. But, that all ends at some point in time, and you don't necessarily control when that is. So you got to develop a career off the field so that you can have, a good quality of life for a long time. And, and to see these guys grow and develop as football players, and then see how many guys go on and play in the NFL and have great careers. And, it's fantastic. Like, C.J. Mosley's going to be here this weekend. And for all those guys to come back, every opportunity they get, really warms my heart because they had a great experience here. The fans, playing for Alabama was a special experience, just like it's a special experience to be the coach here. But those relationships, I don't think you can replace. You can't replace them with wins. You can't replace them with anything. And then the spirit of the fans. I know this was a long time ago, and I know a lot's changed since then, but I've never had a more gratifying experience than when I walked in the stadium 17 years ago for the spring game, the A-Day game, and there were 95,000 people in the stands. And, that still gives me cold chills to this day to know that there were that many people who were so committed to wanting to see, the University of Alabama have a quality program and something that they could be proud of. And that's what we work for to, try to please those people. And, that means a lot as well.
I also thought it was great, you've commented on this in the past, when the tornado came through and you got out there, and just because these people wanted to talk to you, talk to somebody, to meet your players, what you guys did, you became far more than just a head football coach. You became a community leader in that experience, at least as far as my eyes saw it.
Well, and I think that, I think sometimes, we all compete and we're all competitive. But sometimes things are just about people. It doesn't matter, what those people do, who they root for, what their disposition is, what their circumstances in life. But sometimes you can support and help, and that presence that you have to be able to do that is, really, really important.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I got asked a question today about, and I'm sure it was for some ESPN thing that they're going to play when Veterans Day comes, but I got asked about how I felt about veterans. Well, Terry and I just watched the Pacific, like I watch one episode at 10 to 11, and I go to bed at 11, and it lasts for however many episodes there are, 10 days or whatever. But to have gratitude for what all those people have done so that we have the quality of life that we have, you can't even put it into words. And, so many people can impact and influence other people by the sacrifices that they make that to show that appreciation sometimes is, I think, really necessary.
Coach, we have a visitor here at the restaurant with a question for you. Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Great, great. Coach Saban, next week's a bye week. What does a bye week off look like for you and your family?
Well, you know, I think the most important thing is when you play 8 games in a row, let me first of all talk about the players. You know, psychologically and physically, they need to recover. You know, they don't need another game plan. They don't need another week's practice. You know, they need to have some rest time and recover. So to have a couple days off on both ends of the week, I think is very helpful to them. But really, we do get a day off on Saturday, you know, and coaches go recruiting on Friday. We'll practice on Thursday, and we give the players Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, so they get 3 days off at the end of the week next week. And we actually end up going, Terry and I go to the lake on Thursday night. In fact, I'll do the radio show next week from there. Mm-hmm. And we spend, you know, a day and a half, most of which I watch film, but it's still a different atmosphere. It's a different environment. You're, you know, away from it. But, you know, we'll take our opponents that we have left, and we'll use each day of practice on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and work on one of those opponents, so that when we actually do play those last 4 games, we've had some exposure, you know, to those teams. So maybe that week that we play won't be, you know, quite as difficult for the players in terms of their preparation. So it's an opportunity to get a little downtime, but we work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday pretty good, you know, trying to get ready for the rest of the season. So then we come back on Sunday and go to work on LSU and, you know, try to finish the season the right way.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. We appreciate it. Coach, you were talking about veterans moments ago. Our next caller is Andrew from Travis Air Force Base in California. Travis, welcome into the Nick Saban Show. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Andrew.
Good.
How are you?
Good, good. I called you for last year when I was living in Tokyo, but I PCS to California a couple of months ago. And now I'm on leave in Tennessee, and I'm actually driving down to Alabama tomorrow for a funeral. So busy times. I'm still an active duty Air Force chaplain, and I deeply appreciate your comments about veterans a moment ago.
Great. Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate all you do. And there's been so many great servicemen who've impacted the quality of our life. I don't think we spend enough time thanking them.
Oh, you've done so much. When I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2008, I had a flag flown for you and sent it to you for your work with Nick's kids. And your precious wife, Miss Terry, sent me a nice card with the team picture from the 2008 team, and that was very memorable. So I thank you for that.
Well, thanks. We appreciate your support, that's for sure. Appreciate all you do.
Andrew,
Yes, sir.
thank you so much. What else is on your mind?
Okay, so it kind of goes in with what you said earlier about former players, but you know, we hear about the 171 players who have played for you at Alabama and logged some game time in the regular season in the NFL, and we all celebrate that. But there's hundreds more who never go on to play football again after leaving Alabama. And some of these players spend 4 or 5 years with you there, and I'm sure you've had a wonderful influence upon their life. Is there maybe a success story or two that you could share with us about a former player who we don't hear about, who didn't go on to play professional ball? Because I know that the way you form, shape, and mold these young men go far beyond the football field.
Yeah, well, you know, I think it would be we've had so many, and people don't know about them. But, you know, we've consistently had an 85% plus graduation rate with our players, which, you know, the regular student body doesn't graduate anywhere near that. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that that's one of the probably top 10 in the country if you take graduation rate, how many guys graduate on time, and what is APR, which is how guys are making progress toward a degree. So I don't think people realize that almost every player that plays here graduates. And the only guys that don't, we would have like a 97% graduation rate if you couldn't go out early for the NFL draft, because we've had like 35 guys that went out for the draft that would have graduated in a year if they'd have stayed in school. So if you couldn't go out for the draft, almost every player is graduating. So the fact that they're graduating, they're all having success. And I can't sit here and think of one guy who has played here who didn't graduate, who has a difficult circumstance in his life now because he didn't do the right things when he was here. So for me to point out one guy, there's so many that come to mind that I'm so proud of that, do really well. Jake Coker, for example. I mean, there's just all kinds of guys, and it's almost unfair to mention one without mentioning them all.
Yeah, I hear you, but you got a great group. There's no doubt about it. We're going to come right back. Jenny has a bunch more questions to ask. We've got a lot going on, so stick around as we continue on the Nick Saban Show on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Empty backfield as Jan Miller vacates. 4:47 to go in the half. Milroe looks, has a man open. Touchdown, Alabama. Amari Niblack, the tight end. He was open for 29 yards. They totally lost sight of him, and Alabama adds to their lead.
3 receiving touchdowns for Amari Niblack as we welcome you back to the Nick Saban Show. This segment of the Nick Saban Show is brought to you by Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. With zero sugar and refreshingly delicious, is Coca-Cola Zero Sugar the best Coke ever? Find out for yourself. Jenny Dell is seated to my right from CBS Sports. To her right, Coach Nick Saban. And to his right, Coach, you got the fire extinguisher going there?
Oh, wow.
We got birthday candles galore on a huge birthday cake.
Shall we sing?
I forgot about this.
You forgot about it? Coach Saban's birthday is always on the off week, so he's not here to be able to be sung to. But it is a beautiful football. It says the GOAT on it. It says Happy Birthday, Coach Saban. It's a gridiron, Alabama in the end zones, and I'll tell you, beautiful coach. That's something we've seen every year. Go ahead and make a wish. All right. Blew them all out. Uh-oh, one came back.
Is that a trick candle?
I believe that's a trick candle.
Who did that?
Won't go out.
Yeah.
Oh, silly.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I guess there's 17 candles on there for 17 years. So, wow.
And 17 more.
Good. I'm hopeful.
There you go.
See, that candle's still not out.
Yeah, that's a trick candle. Somebody snuck in there. Jenny, jump on in again if you'd like.
All right, Coach, so you got the big birthday coming up. What is the best gift you have ever received?
Wow.
It's a tough one.
Good question.
I'm asking the hard hitters tonight, guys.
You know what, though? The best gift is actually, we have probably 12 couples who on Saturday night, when we have this bye week, which has been the same week for 17 years, come to the house at the lake. They're great friends. We have great relationships. We've known them for 20 years. And I think the gratitude that I have to have those kind of relationships with those kind of people is probably one of the best gifts that you could have. And there's nothing that anybody's ever bought me or anything like that I can even remember worthy of talking about. But those relationships and, those things are invaluable. And to be thankful that your children, your family, grandchildren are okay. I think those things are probably gifts enough for me.
I hear you. And you got a beautiful family, and you become quite the granddaddy, too.
Yeah, well,
I've seen pictures, man. You're a softie around the grandkids.
Yeah. Well, we have children at home, and we have gone through some really, really gruesome times the last few weeks with our dogs, and we finally got a new dog, Abby, so we're very, very thankful to have Miss Terry has something at home she can love. So.
And Miss Terry has just laid her head down on the table here and rolls her eyes. Jenny, go ahead. Jump in.
Miss Terry, I know at the beginning of the season, she said you need to be a little bit more feisty on the sideline. What other advice has she given you that you have used during the games?
Wow, she's given me so much advice through the years. Probably the greatest advice really wasn't about something in football, but when I was first a coach at Michigan State, I had this like Till of the Hun reputation with the media. And I would go home and I would say, man, this is just not like me. I don't know why they portray me this way. This is not really how I am. And she looked at me and she said, would you ever watch yourself? She says, you're nervous, you're anxious, you don't treat them very well, you don't smile, you don't ever joke with them, you're disrespectful to them, you act like they're not asking good questions sometimes. I said, why would they like you? Why would they? So I got really mad that she said that. But then, like a lot of times when somebody says something to you, you go think about it. And I really changed. That changed my whole image as a coach. And it started with changing the image with the media and the people. And it helped so many ways in recruiting and relationships with players and all kinds of things that, and relationships with media people. Which I think is important. You all have a job to do, but you also have a way that you can project who someone is by how they treat you and what they do. So that's probably the most important lesson she ever gave me.
I thank you, Miss Terry. Personally. There's a little intimidation factor that you've got going on, but it's great to have these moments to really see who you are as a person, so you connect with the fans, and you are one of the best at what you do, if not the best at what you do.
When you say intimidation factor, who is intimidating who? Because I am not. I am intimidated at home. I missed what you meant by intimidating.
That's what I meant. The intimidation factor at home, as every husband should feel. I know my husband's watching this right now, so Will, I love you. Let's have a little fun with this one. I know that you're big into music. There's a passion there. If you could have a private concert, say at the Lake House for your birthday with your 20 friends and couples, right, who would you want to come perform?
Well, that's a hard one. But, we always like concerts, and we've been to a lot of concerts, and I've probably seen the Eagles 3 or 4 times. But probably one of my greatest memories at a concert, we took 10 folks to see the Rolling Stones when they were at Georgia Tech it's probably 3 or 4 years ago. We went to the Shepherd Center to visit some folks who were, in the Shepherd Center, which is for people who have, issues. And then we went to the concert. And it was completely dark, and we were walking down the steps to our seats. And when that hit Start Me Up, that was like the best I've ever seen. And the lights came on, and it was starting. And I was ready to play. So it was that's probably one of my best memories about a concert. So if I had to pick someone to come, it'd probably be them.
Have you seen the Eagles with Vince Gill yet?
Yeah, we saw him in Birmingham a couple years ago when he was with them. He was great.
Yeah, he's quite a talent. Tough role to step into, but he's quite a talent. Let's go to the phones. Bobby is down in Mobile. Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Bobby, what's up, man?
Apparently, Bobby's got a little problem with his connection there. So let's go to Joe. He is next up in Vestavia Hills. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Coach. How are you?
Joe, good, buddy. How are you?
Good. Hey, I heard Pee Wee ask you a question, I think the first one on the show, and I was just going to ask you a question related to that. It seems like most defenses generally in the college and other ranks have their heavy, big defensive linemen in the center gaps, and they're slimmer, really quick guys at linebacker or defensive end. Does it make any sense to flip the tackles and the guards so that they match up better?
I'm not sure I understand. You say take the defensive ends and put them inside as inside pass rushers on the guards?
I'm saying you match up your offensive line with their defense. If you've got the really quick defensive ends matching up against our really big linemen, it's a mismatch when they get them in space, right? And most defenses, college defenses, have their defensive tackles in the gaps in the center. They're really big,
right? Right.
So it seems like it would make sense to match up your tackles with their, middle guys and take a little more agile, linemen and put them on at tackle so they match up better with the defensive ends.
Yeah, well, a couple of issues. I don't totally disagree with your thought process there, but in this day and age of college football, because of the zone read, which maybe, you see people run the zone play, and the quarterback's reading the defensive end. So the defensive end doesn't even get blocked because you block. There's 6 guys in the box. You take 5 guys and block them, and you read the defensive end. If he sits on the line and closes, the quarterback can pull the ball and run with it, and that's that guy's job and responsibility. If he takes the quarterback, then there's a natural gap that you can bend the ball back in. So you need to have very athletic guys playing at the end of the line of scrimmage, the end of the line of scrimmage being in the 5 technique area. Now, let's revert back to if you want to play a 3-4 odd defense, then you have to have 3 big guys, and you actually, because in this day and age you have to play nickel, so that means you only have 1 outside backer in the game and a defensive back. So we're kind of a 3-4 team. So when we have to play 4-2, which is what we have to play a lot in nickel, that's not totally natural for us. And the best way we can play it is play 2 even outside backers, Dallas and Brass. Last year it was Will Anderson in Dallas, that they actually are playing defensive end. And then we have 2 bigger guys in the middle. So those more athletic guys help us on the edges in pass rush, but they also help us play athletic quarterbacks. So there's good and bad in all of it, but we actually can't play 3-4 with those guys in the game either, because they're not big enough to play 5 technique on a big old tackle. 5 technique being head up on a 325-pound tackle. So there's good and bad in both. But I tell you, it's invaluable when you have a guy like, if you remember Jonathan Allen when he was here.
Sure.
He was actually a defensive end. But when we put him inside on 3rd down to be a defensive tackle, he was a total mismatch from a quickness and power standpoint with the guard, and was a tremendous pass rusher as an inside pass rusher, and he's continued to do that, even in the NFL.
Indeed so. We're coming right back. Don't you go away. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Jenny Dell from CBS Sports. Why don't you jump back in with the coach?
Let's do it. Coach, which philosophy do you think echoes with you more? That you love to win or hate to lose?
Well, I think probably hate to lose, because I do think that, for me, fear of failure has always been, a great motivator. Mm-hmm. You want to win, want to be the best, but, and just hate losing, always hate losing, even when I was a kid. So I would say that's, probably the biggest thing. But as a coach, what's even more important is, to me, is like I made the statement early in the week that, it's one thing to win the game, it's another thing to beat the other team. Mm-hmm. So to have your team play to their capabilities, to sort of impose their will for 60 minutes in the game. That doesn't mean you break somebody's will. It means you just, that's your competitive mentality, all right, to, sort of impose your will on the other guy for 60 minutes, and you go out and play the very best, because that's what you're trying to do as a coach. You're trying to get all your players to reach their full potential and play that way, whether it's psychological disposition, whether it's ability to execute and do their job, their poise, their confidence, all those things. So I think it's more, for me, are we doing that? Are we doing that? Because even when we win, and I don't feel like we played a complete game, and I don't feel good unless I feel like we beat the other team. Because then I feel like the team actually played like they're capable of playing, and they did it for all 60 minutes in the game. So, you know, it's not just about winning. You know, I mean, I talk all the time about not being outcome-oriented, being process-oriented, and do the things you need to do to get the outcome that you want. And I'm so focused on that sometimes just because you win, you don't always feel great about the way you won because you don't think you did those things really well. As a coach, now as a player, I think every time you win, you should be happy, should enjoy it. I mean, it should be fun because you put a lot into it, but you're always evaluating those things as a coach.
Coach, the clock on the wall says it's about that time. Time for your final word tonight, presented by Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz, the vehicles are all electric. The feeling is all Mercedes.
Well, you know, we talk about what a great rivalry game this is and what a big game it is, but it should be a big game for everybody. You know, everybody's on the team, all the fans, everybody. And the fans in this game should have a huge impact on this game. I mean, you can have a huge impact with the noise that you make. This team's trying to go fast. They run 2.7 plays every minute in the game. So you can affect that and disrupt that by making noise. And it's going to create energy and environment that our players will play better in. They'll be able to sustain their intensity better in, which is what we lost last week, because it's going to take that kind of game for 60 minutes. These guys make a lot of explosive plays. They go fast. All right, so it's going to be one of those kind of games, and everybody's got to stay with it, and you got to play the next play and stay in it as fans. All right, and you create the momentum of the game by what you do. All right, as fans. Don't worry about the players creating it. You create it for them. One time. One time I'm asking you to do that. All right, that's it.
All right, Coach, have a good night, sir. Great to see you. Coach Nick Saban with us here on this evening's edition of the Nick Saban Show.